Hello and welcome to Pride and Prejudice and Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Nat Elmorel.
I'm LJ Halfyard.
And I'm Kurt Halfyard.
And this is it, folks. It's been a long ride, I guess.
We finally nailed the intro.
Yeah. No. Well, I'll never nail this intro. I'm always going to be horrible at these damn things as long as I live. But we're at episode 6, and we got a lot of ground to cover. But I think it starts off with kind of a little bit of a continuation of the plot of last episode, which was Lydia's elopement. And we do learn a startling revelation about the actual events that led to that. I don't recall how the episode begins proper. Can anyone jump in here?
I thought it was Mrs. Bennet basically just flipping out about everything to her husband.
So that was my first note, was definitely comments from Mrs. Bennet, but I'm not sure if it's then Jane and Elizabeth saying, can we go tell Mother or what? Yeah, because she's in her bedchamber, and one second Mrs. Bennet's thanking her brother, who else but my brother should
Oh, right, Mr.
Gardner,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and then all of a sudden
30
she's
seconds
smacking
later,
him down.
Oh yeah, he's so high-handed. How come he gets to choose where she's getting married?
And
right?
and Mr. Bennet is just standing in the room suffering. Like you just
Is he, or he downstairs in the library?
No, he's
Okay.
there. He's putting up with it.
Okay.
It's one of those rare non-dinner table
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Bennet in the same room together scenes.
Mhm.
He also has a conversation with Lizzie shortly after,
Yeah.
and I think it's for me, as you said, that this podcast could easily be titled Pride and Prejudice and Parenting. Mr. Bennet first takes kind of the thing is like, oh, woe is me. This all would have worked out if I had just had some sons, which I feel is kind of a cop-out for Bennett. It's a moment of real self-pity, which normally he sides with self-deprecation. But he does also cop to the shame of him not stepping up to the plate in a lot of society sides of things, because Mrs. Bennet is so into it. And he hates it. He just stepped aside, and in a way, shirked his parenting duty, and a lot of what has come to pass, a lot of the suffering of his daughters. And, some of them turned out fine. Jane is fine. Elizabeth is fine. It's like there's a spectrum. There's a spectrum. Well, there's a point made at some point in this episode that if Lydia wasn't around, Kitty might have turned out better.
Yeah.
Or no, maybe it's actually because I just finished the novel as well.
Yeah,
it's a denouement in the novel of going, as soon as Kitty was out of the way, as soon as Lydia was out of the way, Kitty kind of came around and learned responsibility. And
Well, no, but at that point, then both, I'm spoil it, but Elizabeth and Jane get married, and so they can chaperone instead of the mother being the chaperone.
Right, but mainly it was like Lydia was just a bad influence on Kitty, even though she's the older one.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, what I'm saying is the father, through lack of hands-on parenting, he did still end up with, very well-adjusted daughters. He just could have done a little more with the wilder ones, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of shocking, even in 1995, but they kept it very well. Maybe it's an American thing. How clearly Mr. Bennet has favorites among his daughters. Like, he's not even shy about it's Elizabeth and then there's some other girls. When there's a conversation when she approaches him with, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but when she approaches him with the Darcy of saying, no, I actually, like this guy, and, this is what's going down. He's like, I don't want you to marry for the wrong reasons, and you're the one. If only one of them works out, you're the one I want to work out.
Oh, is that what your interpretation?
That's what my interpretation is.
I thought it was more of a, you would not be happy in marriage if you couldn't respect your spouse. So I think it was more of a, not that you're my favorite, but just kind of a, yourself, or do you know yourself, Elizabeth, right?
I say that putt. Go ahead.
I think it is pretty clear, though, that Elizabeth is his favorite.
Oh, absolutely, but not necessarily just from that conversation.
I would argue that the respect of leveling with her to that degree in that conversation, which I don't feel he would do with any of his other daughters, speaks volumes of saying, you're the favorite daughter, you're the...
Right, but I don't think it's just that he's calling it out. I don't think that's the only reason that he's saying, because you're my favorite. I think he's calling it out because he knows her, right? And if you don't, he's concerned, if you don't respect your husband, then that's, don't give me that pain of seeing you suffer as basically I suffer, is the way he sees it.
Right, because
These are two different conversations. So.
There are several conversations on this, but I just really want, coming to the end of the series, maybe rather than going in plot order, I feel like, so this episode is super stuffed. It has a ton of plot elements, racing to the finish. But then it's got a ton of this is how these characters turned out moments. Like this is, and I feel, while we're on the subject of Mr. Bennett, I want it because he's my favorite character in the series.
You should talk about your favorite.
I have a bromance with Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
We are. I have a lot of the faults of Mr. Bennett, so we smell our own kind of thing.
Exactly.
So watching him, clearly say harsh truths about his marriage and his parenting to his eldest daughter. Now, admittedly, she's 22 or whatever, but it's really interesting to watch him lay that out on the line, on the verge of her nuptials or whatever. But there's just a lot of good parenting lessons in both Mr. Bennett and Mrs. Bennett, who
like a what not to do.
Well, Mrs. Bennett is a textbook case in what not to do, but a lot of modern parenting things, like you want your children to be your friends instead of parenting them. Like, I feel Miss Bennett, even though she's forcing them into her schemes, her whole reaction with Lydia, I mean, she's the youngest, but feels like, you're my favorite and I just want us to get along. When Mr. Bennett says, I'll tell you one thing, this is the classic Archie Bunker moment here in Pride and Prejudice. I'll tell you one thing, that man is not stepping foot in this house. Cut to the carriage pulling up and them getting out and coming into the house. Well, the one time Mr. Bennett truly loses on that front is that because he generally stays out of this kind of thing. And Mrs. Bennett is too much on the superficial things and doesn't even listen to her. Mr. Bennett kind of listens but makes jokes about it, and Mrs. Bennett doesn't even listen. She's completely doing her own thing, and she's so caught up in living vicariously because you get the sense that if there's a daughter that Mrs. Bennett is most like, it's actually Lydia.
Yeah.
So she gets all caught up with the soldiers and even with the
choosing the houses that they should move into.
Yeah, she's picking homes and that they can't afford.
Yeah.
And when Wickham and Lydia come to the estate, she's super indulgent of Wickham. You could see Mr. Bennett is just like, no, I don't even want him in my house.
Yeah.
Which is instead private.
Yeah.
But then she's fawning over him and fawning over Lydia, and then Lydia, being just a brat, is like, now all you sisters, you're lower than me in station, and so it's just
I go first.
Very tedious.
Yes,
very tedious.
When they walk into the house.
Very, very tedious. And it goes even further because right after that, when they're all taking their turn around Longbourn, like out in the sunshine, I like that phrase, by the way. It's used a lot in the series.
About?
Let's go take a turn.
Do you want me to find out how many times?
It's a lot. But you see Wickham prancing around like a doofus on his horse.
Oh, yeah.
Just doing this thing where all the sisters are walking, and Lydia's like, look at my husband. Look at how handsome. Look at what a horseman.
Yeah.
What a horseman he is. And
people listening to this could have just seen Kurt's motion.
Oh, my prancy arm moves. But anyway, it's fascinating, again, because Pride and Prejudice is such a reaction shot machine. You get to Lydia, overly doing it with her never-do-well husband, and then you get you get Jane's reaction shot, you get Elizabeth's reaction shot, you get Kitty's reaction shot or whatever. It's it's fun to watch how they've, they're just waiting for this time to pass, and then they shoo them off. Outside of Lydia's accidental revelation that Darcy was instrumental in, or at least attended their wedding. That's kind of the big, while all this is going on, that's the one piece of
The
plot
TSM
information
turning point,
that's going in, and then that spawns Elizabeth to write to Mrs. Gardner, because she knows they were at the wedding, to get the real story, and that's when you just get plot overload. So you get okay, Darcy paid for everything now, and now she's all caught up in, why would he do that, and I thought I pushed Darcy away,
no, he left.
Or he left because it was awkward,
so why
and
would he be
I'm
there?
tainted. Why would he be there? I wish in her mind she could visualize the 1970s beat cop sequence from previous episodes, but nevertheless not there. And then where does that leave us?
Well, then, and then Mr. Bingley pays another visit.
Yes.
Oh yes, the Bingley. There's a lot of Bingley in this episode. So they come back for their shooting party. So he's decided not to sell the Netherfield estate.
Actually, we don't know why he came back necessarily.
No, the plot dictates he has to come back. He doesn't come back from any new information. He just comes back.
Which is strange, because they do have the sequence where Bingley is talking with Darcy and feels that he held that from him.
His first visit, where Mrs. Bennet is like, Jane, Bingley's coming, get down there, and you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that. She's back in full episode 1 Miss Bennet mode, or Mrs. Bennet mode, and Jane is a little bit nervous because she doesn't really know. And the great dramatic irony of this whole sequence of Bingley awkwardly in the kitchen with Darcy, because Darcy's there as well, and Mrs. Bennet is just such a savage brute to Darcy.
Yeah, she hasn't changed.
She's brutal. But Bingley is like, he's kind of clueless. He's just kind of sitting there, and he doesn't. It's really awkward.
To see Jane.
He's happy. There's definitely happiness, and they reconnect and rekindle. But the dramatic irony is that half the room knows stuff, and Bingley doesn't. And it's later when they go back to Netherfield, and it's just Darcy and Bingley, and he's like, "Oh, I think I've neglected Jane, and we haven't seen her." And then Darcy comes out and says, "Hey, by the way, my great regret is hiding the fact that Jane ran to London."
Well, and I think that's where we find out that Darcy encouraged them, or maybe he didn't encourage them, but he wanted to see Bingley and Jane together to see, based on his new information, was there some affection between the two of them, right?
Yeah, because Darcy does nothing. He doesn't really make a lot of eye contact with Elizabeth in the kitchen.
Yeah, he goes and looks.
He's back, like, everyone's kind of back to episode 1 here, but Darcy does look at Bingley Jane. He does size that back up, and then he tells Bingley, by the way, I shouldn't have done this. I regret doing this. She's head over heels for you. She ran all the way to London to make contact, and myself. He didn't say that he collaborated with his sister. The Bingleys are pretty much out of this. He takes full accountability. That's actually a check mark on
like
Mr.
Darcy needs another check mark.
I know, but this is where all the check marks come into play, both Elizabeth and Darcy. And then Darcy, this is a fun scene. This is where Pride and Prejudice gets really like pandery, almost like, so now everyone's happy. It's kind of, things are falling back into place as they should. Bingley comes by, and Miss Bennet just loses her shit about, forget Lizzie's hair. Go fix hers hair. And Kitty's running around looking for clothing, and she's like, "Oh, hang Kitty!" And then Kitty runs off crying. It becomes almost like a slapstick routine in the Bennet household. But all is well, and Jane is happy, and she tells Elizabeth, "Oh, I wish you could be as happy as I." And it's interesting because it's a totally different tone, of course, than Lydia's lording her thing over everyone. This is a more genuine connection.
You gonna tell everybody what happened?
You be my guest.
So Mr. Bingley proposes to Jane.
In a whisper. It's a weird proposal. He whispers and runs out the door.
No, remember the Mrs. Bennett's
Oh,
scheme to get all the girls out of the room so we can have 5 minutes to propose?
The great wink conspiracy.
Great wink, yeah.
What are you doing, Mother? This is Kitty, classic. What are you doing? Why are you winking at me?
Yeah.
Well, I like too that when Elizabeth comes back into the room to help facilitate things. I mean, you know, one that you know, she's shocked to find them standing next to each other by the fireplace. But
well, I mean, I don't. Go ahead.
The whole setup for the scene. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, when you get two like dogs or horses together to breed. Like that's basically what it's set up.
Well, they're very agreeable. But no, I before that I like the scene where so Mrs. Bennet has herded Kitty and maybe Mary, I don't know, maybe out of the room, but Elizabeth's got nothing to do. She's like, I am totally and she's turning away. She's just slowly picks up her needlework,
which
and
you've
she's
never seen her do.
You've never no. She just turns away, and then the servant comes, Mrs. Hill or whatever, and it comes. Oh, by the way, you're needed too. And then they're all just sitting upstairs. But what I'm saying is, I didn't think that the proposal happened in that space. I always thought that it just took them a while, and then when Elizabeth comes back down and peeks in on them, Bingley's like whispers it and then runs.
No.
That was what I interpreted.
No, because remember, Mrs. Bennet says upstairs, 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes.
Yeah, and then he whispers and he runs.
No, he doesn't.
That is my interpretation of the Bingley proposal method.
Pardon? Oh, no.
Oh, we're not going to tell that story on here. As much as it's deeply
Pride, Prejudice, and Proposals.
Unromantic and practical. It does not make for good podcasting. We are far too practical. I try to keep the I should stop talking. Yeah, there we go. There we go. So I will take on the advice of my attorney and spouse. I'll take the 5th.
Well, as much as I like the idea of him whispering the proposal, I got the sense that he proposed to her before Elizabeth entered the room afterwards as well. But,
yes, because then he's going to ask Mr. Bennet for permission, right?
Yeah, and he asks Mr. Bennet, and Mr. Bennet's like, I like him. He has that great line. Yeah. Maybe it's later on in the episode, but he's like, they're so agreeable. No decisions will ever be made, and the servants will rob them blind, and they will live beyond their means, and they will be happy. I just love it. But it's clearly unlike Lydia's match. That is actually, believe it or not, Mr. Bennet's full stop blessing of the union. And Mrs. Bennet, of course, breaks out the numbers again.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody takes a drink.
Yep.
£5,000 a year. Yeah. Okay, so that's been all tied off.
Lady Catherine.
The climax, the real climax of a very eventful episode is the 4-horse, 3 liveryman carriage that shows up unannounced.
Yep.
Storms into the gates. Mm-hmm. I think
Leaves
Kitty?
Her unwell daughter in the carriage. Yeah.
Changed from the book.
Yeah.
It's just the bird in the book.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. So she's got the her, is it her daughter? It's not her daughter. It's
in the carriage. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that has been kind of promised to Darcy. Yeah, mm-hmm. She brings her along, just like Collins. They get some news and they hop in the carriage and drive 50, which I assume is a pretty long carriage ride. Yeah. She comes in, no introductions, full blown, like rude, entitled, British aristocracy, like the worst in British class system.
It's funny because Mrs. Bennet, knowing who Lady Catherine de Bourgh is,
she shuts the hell up.
Well, she tries to actually have a conversation, and you're right, we never sit here after dark, or we never do this. Whereas as soon as Mr. Darcy in the episode 1 shunned Lizzie, who cares about him? Like, who cares about him, right? Which is funny because he's a potential suitor, right?
I do feel that Mrs. Bennet is quite quiet. She answers to Berg's or attempts to answer the questions, but she is not the usual in-your-face Mrs. Bennet, and it's all about the tension between de Burgh and Elizabeth. Elizabeth doesn't even know, doesn't even have any information yet. De Burgh just comes in, sits down, kind of puts down, like you said, puts down the architecture. Just a rude bitch is really what she is. And then she's like, let's go take a turn. And I feel that's the freeze frame where, and then it stencils the mixed martial arts stats of de Burgh. This is Elizabeth. I love this scene. This is
the quintessential British moment.
This is the climax of the series. I know it's about Darcy and Elizabeth learning and getting by
But this is the final battle.
But this feels this is the big boss. In a man versus themselves kind of story, it's hard to have a big boss, right? So you get to have this conflict where they take it out into the little walled off garden, and de Burgh comes at her like Gatling gun style with everything, and Elizabeth just dekes her with logic. It's so delightful to watch. All of Mr. Bennet's years of training, he's like Burgess Meredith in Rocky. He's training her for years, and she just outwits everything.
But she's got to respect. She's got to. She's not rude.
No, she's polite, she's on point, and she's totally with logic. Everything is, well, if it's impossible, why are you here? Aren't you confirming it? If you don't want it to be known, you...
I can't speak for myself, and I'm sorry if I offended you, but you're simply validating all the claims that you made by coming here, so I can't really help you, I hate to say this, but I dare say you brought it upon yourself.
I dare say. That was the I dare say that put you over the top, sir.
She held her countenance very well, though.
Damn
you. But I must admit, I get so much joy out of this scene. It's so well played because de Burgh is kind of a horrible person, but in a somewhat inconsequential way. Now de Burgh is coming out with all the consequence of her rank, her privilege, and just slinging everything. And here's Elizabeth saying, no, I'm entitled to be where I am. I'm entitled to do what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. How dare you speak for this man that's of age, or whatever you and your sister-in-law planned.
But I'm working for my happiness, right? So just because he is your almost nearest relation, which
and you had this almost nearest, I like that. That's quite the flag to plant. Yeah. My father's brother's niece's former roommate. But yeah, it's a great scene.
She saves the fact that she has no proposal from Darcy to the very end. It's just a wasted effort.
Oh yeah.
And that's her trump card. And then when she finally gets her go, she's you've insulted me on every degree. And
then she walks away, which is the ultimate. So she lays
just turn around and walk away though. She goes, I beg you to leave, and
I've had enough.
Yes,
you've insulted me in every way. And then de Burgh is like, no, I'm just getting started. What about Lydia? And she's like, I'm out of here. And then, but nevertheless, they do go to the coach.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't wish your mother well, and I don't. We're at it. And her poor daughter, just sat in the coach the whole time. What's her name?
In there too. So.
What is her name?
What is her name?
The Jewel.
Anne. Okay. Are on this, but okay. So Kitty's elopement, threatens to bring ruin on the family, and it seems like that Elizabeth is kind of in the same position with de Burgh, whether justified or not. And in one instance, Elizabeth is really, really upset with Lydia for the potential to bring ruin on the family. But in the other one, she's kind of in the same position, and she's kind of thinking just about herself. Now, she's completely justified in everything that she says to Catherine de Burgh, but this is also a major threat to her family. And de Burgh says outright, I will ruin your family. So I don't know. Like,
I do feel, yeah, maybe it. Well, I mean, think about the titanic effort of will, like that it would take to stand up to this woman in this way. I mean, obviously Elizabeth is of strong character and she has self-confidence, and she's stood up to de Burgh in small ways, like teasingly small ways over the course of their encounters at Rosings. But here, yeah, so maybe if she oversteps her bounds, and a lot of this series is actually Elizabeth flirting with disaster, but all the sisters in one way or another, except for Jane and Mary, are doing this, right? It's just the nature of the beast.
But maybe she's had a few of these conversations with herself in her head when she's reflected on, now she knows that Darcy's gone and saved Lydia, right? And the last few times that they'd met, he'd it's been a little more positive, a little more smiles in the eyes and stuff like that. So at some point she's even contemplating, okay, yeah, I wish Darcy wasn't, or why was Darcy doing this? Does he possibly still love me and all that stuff? So she might be preparing some of these conversations already in her head, right?
Well, I feel there's a scene missing in the series where she goes, because anyone that's had a conflict of this magnitude in this society is going to go back to their drawing room and replay that fight out.
Oh yeah,
in their head a lot. There's no easy way to do that, and I must admit,
unless you write a letter.
The few times in Pride and Prejudice where they try to do that with Lizzie are those awkward, superimposed images. So in a way, maybe I'm happy that they didn't attempt to do that. Instead, she has the conversation with Jane where she tries to say, "Hey, look, I'm back in love with Darcy," and Jane is like, "No."
Well, she's not saying that she's in love at this point yet. She's just saying, but she just wished Mr. Darcy.
Well, she knows kind of what his feelings are for her.
Or think so. I think I'm messing up the order again. Because...
Well, Jane, the takeaway from that conversation is that Elizabeth is trying to say, Darcy's somewhat back on the table, and Jane is like, "There's no way," and she's like, "Wait a minute, you're the one person that should get that this is a possibility. You see the good and whatever, and you're like, if I can't convince you, I am so dead with everybody else."
Yeah, that's
it's a good scene. It's a good scene, and it's a scene where Jane is the first time where because Jane's happy and her affairs are in order, so you see Jane going, like, actually come in with some confidence. She's like, "No way, you hate that guy." It's a great thing. It's like, it's almost like for a moment there, Jane is more Lizzie-like, and then Elizabeth's like, "So this is the moment that you decide to not see the good in everybody." The one time when I'm laying it out on the line, it's a good scene. And then she goes off and meets up with Darcy, right? Is there anything in between?
There's. I don't know if you want to talk about another letter from Mr. Collins. They're so entertaining.
Oh yes.
Beware!
No,
Lady Catherine's coming.
I'm surprised we didn't get it into the when I was speaking with Mr. Bennett before, because it's one of the great lines of the book that doesn't have to do with Pride or Prejudice or Elizabeth or Darcy. It's the scene where he tries to make light of Mr. Collins being a dick, and then of saying that they're engaged, that he's heard this rumor that her and Mr. Darcy, and she's just had this fight with de Burgh. I don't know how Mr. Bennett is unaware of that, but I guess he was out.
Well, no, he says it in there. I suppose Lady Catherine's visit.
Oh, that's why she came by.
Yeah, just to refuse her acceptance, or
And she's like, and he's like, "Isn't this all funny? Isn't this all hilarious?" And she's like, "No, actually, it's not that funny."
Yeah.
I wish I could have this laugh with you, but I can't. But right in the middle of that is my favorite line. Let me see if I can find it here. I wrote it down. What do we live for? To make sport of our neighbors and laugh at them in our turn, or whatever. Like, to be. I've screwed it up. What do we live for? To make sport of our neighbors.
For our neighbors to laugh at us and
laugh at them in our turn, right? I feel that's a good chunk of the book, right? In a nutshell, is everyone in everyone's business.
But that's his line too. Like that's his
classic. Yeah, but most of the revelations or the thematic grist of Pride and Prejudice is more related to, Lizzie and Darcy's mutual self-examination and their ability to move past their first impressions and actually listen to each other. And that line feels very like Shakespearean comedy. Mm-hmm. That line, when he utters it in the series, I'm like, wow, for a minute here we just turned into like Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. But it's also perfectly encapsulates Mr. Bennet's character. Like, he can't move past. He can reflect, he can see it, he can call it out, but clearly his relationship with his wife has not been able to move past the hurdles that Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy are soon to finally, mm-hmm. Leap over. Mm-hmm. It's a good scene. I'm saying that a lot. I'm not a huge fan of episode 5, but episode 6 is nonstop giving up the goods.
When your intro is basically somebody sewing and doing some sort of needlework, tying up ends,
Yeah, it seems. In the scene right before Elizabeth goes to Darcy, when she does talk to her father and says kind of what she said to Jane, like I do love him, and there's a very serious mm-hmm. back and forth. It's fascinating when I just want to point out the filmmaking here. Mm-hmm. When Elizabeth has like a monologue of all the reasons of why people don't fully understand Darcy and why her ability to listen and see and commit herself to that act, the camera pushes right past Mr. Bennet and it just keeps going in and in and in and in and in on Elizabeth. It's a really maybe my easy peasy climax is the de Burgh smackdown, but in a way that push in of Elizabeth just really verbalizing everything that the book and the miniseries stands for in that one speech, not even to Darcy, to her father, it's pretty important, that scene. And then she runs off and meets up with Darcy on the walk around the grounds. Like, she's off with, doesn't it go from there to there? Am I mistaking something?
Yeah, you were talking about the conversation about how she's admitting that she loves Darcy to her father after Darcy went and asked for her approval for marriage. So we have...
I'm out of order, am I?
We haven't had that scene where Elizabeth gets a chance to finally talk with Darcy and thank him for what he's done.
Yeah, that's a key scene. Let's talk about that.
Okay. I didn't really have much to say on that scene. It's
but wait a minute.
What?
But you're like all giddy when you're watching this sequence. You are like you're in the moment when you don't have nothing to say about it, but you're like on a certain high during this sequence because they're really, you get a really big Colin Firth smile when he says, "Tell me, like, don't lead me on." Yeah. Are we? Is there a chance here? Because I'm not going to ask again. Like, this is. Yeah. I've already made a fool of myself once. He said, "I've done these things. I didn't do them for your family or whatever. I did them for you. Yep. But if you are still not into this, tell me now." And she.
I'll be forever silent.
She says, "Yeah, no. I've totally come around. I've totally changed." And then there's a great, like, big Colin Firth smile. Like, it's a long hold on his face while she's speaking to him, and he's smiling. Laura Jane is smiling in her chair. 40 million people in Britain are smiling.
Elizabeth smiling.
And it's the big happy.
I like the book version better than that scene.
Really?
Yeah, I do. It feels a little bit longer. Like, that scene just seems a little bit short, and
because this episode has so much on its plate, like the last whoosh of stuff is pretty bing, bing, bang, bang. They don't show or even really mention the wedding in the book. Like, they don't really give you the particulars, but the show feels like, yeah, Britain's watching. We got to give them some weddings. We got to end this thing on some weddings. Mm-hmm. So you get the double wedding. Same priest, by the way.
Yes.
That married Lydia.
Did you see the face difference, though? He's
pretty angry. He's pretty angry in the first one.
Delighted in the other one.
But he still gives them a lecture. And there's this great cutaway to, he's like, marriage shouldn't be this, and this, and then you cut to...
That's montage.
Well, Miranda...
They have Lydia and Wickham for fornication, and then they have the procreation of children, is when they show de Burgh and her daughter.
And,
yeah, it's just sitting there in a lonely...
Right. In the big piano room of Rosings. But our daughter walked in and, like, you know, soaked up the last 15 minutes of this episode.
Yeah.
And all of us, the three of us in the theater watching the last, the wedding scenes, it's a fun... I love when movies do this. They basically say, let's just assemble... A wedding's a great excuse to do it.
Yep.
Let's just assemble all the cast. And even though it's a pretty shallow focus on Bingley and Jane and Darcy and Elizabeth, you can see the Bingley sisters. You can see the Gardners. You can see Mr. Collins. And unfortunately, no Charlotte in this episode except for her in the background at the wedding. I feel Charlotte... they said all that they needed to say with that character, with the second visit and everything else, but it does feel like, would like to a little bit. I'm still gunning for the short drama series of the Collins Charlotte wedding and how they eventually deeply grow in love with each other and come to mutual. This is Pride and Prejudice harder. I want the
Prejudicer.
the Collins version.
It's the man who wasn't there, and you get Tony Sharp and Leonardo's.
It's all good. It's all not to tangent off, but that character, Tony Shalhoub's character in that movie, was the first time that I saw Tony Shalhoub go full aggressive. Usually he's meek and easygoing. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Anyway, yes, let's put Tony Shalhoub while we're dreamcasting.
Mr. Collins and or maybe Mr. Wickham. But I don't know. I really don't have a problem with the proposal scene. I love the momentum of this episode. I think, like you said, there's a lot of ground to cover, and I think it gives due weight to it. And I think at this point, you know, they built it up and they've made enough effort of it that they do more with, you know, the idea of the confirmation, or that inkling of the confirmation than the actual confirmation itself. Like, it gives you a chance to have the whole exchange between de Burgh and Lizzie. It gives you the whole chance to have Lizzie talk about happiness with her father and have the conversation, so you see that Jane is actually kind of matured slightly. It's like the one other person besides Lizzie and Darcy who is actually changed somewhat as a person. And so I think, you know, you've paid off so much of that proposal that I think they do a very nice job of kind of getting it out of the way quickly. Yeah, just saying that my feelings have changed and my perspective has changed, and you know it's coming, so let's head to the end.
Yeah, the episode is like a collision of set pieces. It's like one big set piece after another, which I guess the whole series could be parceled into that way. On the whole, reflecting on, you know, after you watch the double wedding in the middle of winter, I guess that's
why not?
Why not? But you realize just how simple and short everything is. You know, for a 400 and something page novel, and all of the nuance of characters, the actual number of incidents in the film is pretty slim. It's actually pretty tight. You should
start reading some more romance novels or something.
Maybe.
And then you'll see.
Well, again, this really is like the great grandmother of the, at least of the romantic comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's also, you have one small event and then you see everyone's reaction to it. Like, you get so much mileage for so many characters out of just one small thing. I mean, you know, the episode 5 is basically the entire Bennett's reaction to Lydia running off, and in turn, Darcy's reaction, the Gardner's reaction, the Collins reaction, all that. I think it just goes really, really far with a little bit of action. And I think since the concentration is on the characters and the language and their exchanges and their reactions, I have no problem with that.
You mean that Pride and Prejudice is about the ripples? Like it's about if someone does this, watching how that ripples through society?
Well, I mean, a Shakespeare play is pretty much the same way. I mean, there's not the most complex plots in Shakespeare. It's all about the characters reacting to those plot elements or reacting to others' reactions from them.
Well, I must admit, as horrible as Mrs. Bennet is over the course of the series, how selfish and oblivious and not a lot of positive traits in Mrs. Bennet are on display. She kind of does get her way, like in a roundabout thing. She's not even terribly upset. Everyone else seems to understand the gravity of hushing up Lydia and Wickham, but I mean, Mrs. Bennet is like, well, why didn't they have a bigger announcement in the paper? She's kind of, so it's kind of weird to see that she kind of accidentally wins in the end. She gets to go on being as oblivious. Like, I mean, for the final drink of the series, you get one more round of Mrs. Bennet quoting everybody's salary, and all is forgiven with Mr. Darcy when he proposes to her, and his accounts are now on the table, and she's like, okay, I can live with them, which I guess makes Elizabeth's life a little easier. She's worried about that, but it all's well that ends well, I guess.
And of course, I think we all know that the freeze frame is going to be the two of them kissing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty long kiss, actually. I think the kiss is saucier than than Mr. Darcy coming up out of the drink.
And just watch where Colin Firth's hand is in that. If you have
I gotta go watch it again now. I totally
was making that up, but now it's just a rumor on this. That gets into the Pride and Prejudice.
The wonton edition, as Laura Jane says.
The wonton.
And it's not Chinese dumplings. So what have we all learned? What have we all learned from the experience of your 25th watch?
I now have a new appreciation for how to interact with you, the Mr. Bennet lover, so that it's like, oh, okay.
This could be our inside out. We can frame problems in the overly simplified.
Right. Stop acting like Mr. Bennet and start
start parenting. Yeah. It is. Well, because you've watched this series
a few times.
But before you were a mother and after you were a mother.
No.
And what you didn't? I thought I gave you the series in. Oh no, it might have been 07, right? Yeah. So okay, maybe I'm on the wrong track there, but I'm trying to say we definitely watched this viewing. I felt there was a strong lens of parenting going on, even though Elizabeth and Darcy are the focus of the series. There's a lot of periphery lessons to be learned about parenting, which I don't think was necessarily the intention of the BBC miniseries. It's just so intrinsic in the material that you can't avoid putting it in there. And you get to see the Lucases, capital.
Yep.
You get to see the Gardners with their brood of children. Actually, there's a nice scene in this episode when the Gardners come back to Longbourn, and it's Elizabeth and I don't know who she's talking to, if it's her mother or her father, walking in the hall. But you can see for that whole scene where they're walking in, the Gardners like hugging all their children and talking to them. And they are way in the background, almost out of focus, and they are committed to playing that scene out. It's a nice little detail that that the actors, they're in the frame. It's if you watch that instead of what's happening in the foreground, there's because the Gardners are kind of held up in the series of they don't have a lot of money, but they're okay. They're well off, but they do the right thing. They don't have all of the entitlements or station of the Darcys or the de Bourghs, but they actually are perfectly in that aspirational upper middle class, where they live their values, they're good people.
Mhm.
They, like, in a way, the Gardners are like the secret role models in this in this series. And if they didn't cancel that trip to Lake Country,
Yeah.
it's all turns on the canceling of the trip to the Lake Country. There would be no happy ending. There would be no double wedding. It would all be for naught. That's how close this one came.
Well, what happens when their kids grow up and get as old as the Bennett?
I don't know. I feel the Gardners have a stronger parental relationship and a more mutual listening to each other. Although they do just dump all their kids off over at the Bennetts and go for a little tour around the...
Jane's in charge. You notice that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's not really Mrs. Bennett who's in charge. But
Would
Jane
you leave your kids with Mrs. Bennett?
No, I would not.
She would give them biscuits and...
Oh, yeah, she'd give them all candy and then shake them
and
up
then
and send
say,
them home at, like...
my nerves.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that would be that.
It's not necessarily always... so much about the parenting as well, but I think it's about the relationship. But I think maybe this is the time that we saw it through the parenting lens. But I think a lot of it is also about relationships as well. The start of relationships, how a relationship has been established for so many years and stuff like that. I think before this viewing, I would have reflected more on the relationships between people,
all the
husband and wives, more so.
And all of the hustle bustle, if it were Shakespeare, hurly-burly, of the forming of relationships. Meanwhile, they all have full lives to live afterwards.
Yeah.
There's a lot of grinding minutia, and Nat, as a fresh new parent, you're like right in the middle of all of that minutia long after the courtship and the fun stuff. Now you got the work. This is the work that you're into.
Thank you for inspiring me. Jeez.
No, that's the problem, because I have a son, so I'll have nothing.
Yes, you get the Mr. Bennett out.
Yeah,
if only I had sons.
My son doesn't want to watch Pride and Prejudice, but my daughter, her and I sit down about twice a year for the last couple of years and have watched it. So.
They've watched it in every room of the house.
Yeah, basically.
They've watched it in the living room. They've watched it in the bedroom. They've watched it in the theater.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've never met Willem, but I get a sense that his tastes are varied enough that eventually he will come to appreciate, the classical British drama.
When Willem was 4, he came in and sat in my lap while I was watching Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette, and I'm like, there's not much here for you, buddy.
That's because 4-year-olds love their porn, as we all do.
Go ahead.
I think this is, just watching it again, I'm amazed at how fast-paced this is and how quickly the episodes go by.
Yep.
How easy it is to pick up the language. Like, Shakespeare is my field of specialty, and I can still struggle with the language of that. And, Austen was only about 200 or so years removed from that. We're only about 200 or so years removed from Austen, and I don't think it's very, very difficult at all to decipher this. And it's really just, you appreciate the elegance of it, and you get in that sense, and I think part of it's the actors as well, just how much is not being said, and how you can easily so quickly pick up what is not being said. And
reaction shot.
Yeah.
And the filmmakers are fully aware that that's how that not being said is best communicated in an audiovisual language rather than words on the page. Yeah.
Well, the second Elizabeth turns away from Catherine de Bourgh and just walks away, it's like, oh, shit! Like, something has happened.
Yeah, I think they do a very... The filmmaking here, I'm not saying it couldn't be improved upon, but from other versions of Pride and Prejudice, the filmmaking was a big step up. It's not just people sitting in drawing rooms. Like, even when they are in drawing rooms, the way they frame, the way they push the camera, it's very, very well crafted. And not just being fussy about craft, because I've seen filmmakers that are just fussy for the sake of everything is in service of amplifying the characters and the mood of that room. It's very, very good. And
I guess I misspoke. It really is. It's more a comedy. It's it takes the classic form of comedy. It ends with a wedding, but there are serious issues in it, and there are profound statements that it makes, but I think it never takes itself so seriously as to border on like pomposity.
I think I read somewhere that when Jane Austen first published this novel, she was concerned that it would be too fluffy, because literature at the time was much more, kind of beating you over the head, or being a lot, like putting a lot more information and like textual learning inside the novel. And in a way, she's elevated the form by taking all that out and just letting the simplicity of it work, and having you buy the characters based on not overwriting it. It actually is, like you said, it's a very easy, breezy read, but that does not mean that there's no depth there. There's so much there, and as you said, as you say every time you watch this thing, there's like whole new things that you see, whole new angles. It's one of those great pieces of literature or movie making that whatever age you are, you're going to see things from a different angle. Like when you're young, you might see it from the perspective of the first love. When you're older, you're going to see it from a parenting point of view. And when you're really older, you're just going to be drunk on the couch like Mr. Hurst.
Well, I'm definitely gonna go to Mrs. Bennett's school of how to get your daughter married. Definitely gonna take that advice.
Yeah, it's something. It works out for her. It shouldn't. In a way, part of me is like, oh, look at this. She totally gets a free ride after all that. After all of her meddling, things worked out in spite of it. Poor Mary, though.
Poor Mary. We haven't said that yet.
She does seem like the ideal wife for Mr. Collins.
I know. It's the well, I do believe that Austen is taking a piss with religion, and not religion, but
Clergy?
the act of the clergy, not the spiritual side of the clergy, but the community side. And like, why would you put these people that are supposed to be like above everyone and have them offering advice? Like it doesn't, like when Mr. Bennet is constantly making fun of Mr. Collins' study of the interaction of men and women, like it's a nature show. And yeah, Mr. Collins is just written to be the worst embodiment of that. But Charlotte will whip him into shape. I'm fully convinced.
No, if she stays in the other room, she's not going to whip
him. No.
In.
After a few years of marriage, they'll figure it out. I'm off to write my screenplay.
Well, and I also get the sense that it's that sort of person who goes into the clergy because they can't do anything else, and the only reason that they thrive is because you have some old lady like Catherine de Bourgh who's looking to get in God's good graces, so you become the patron of one of those unctuous priests. Or
either that, or Collins fully exists to allow Miss de Bourgh to know her station.
Yes,
like to she can put him down with impunity or whatever. And Mr. Wickham could have gone into the into the clergy. He would have liked that, on the razor's edge if it wasn't for him bonking every lady in Cambridge.
Well, who's to say Collins?
That is a mental image I do not want to leave this show on.
Well, I was going to say that for your screenplay, you could have a graduate angle where, Elaine is the Charlotte Lucas character, Collins is the Benjamin, and then Catherine de Bourgh is Mrs. Robinson.
No shipping. I'm sure there is a wealth of Pride and Prejudice shipping, and that thoroughly bizarre scenario you just raised is no doubt there. Like, you could just Google that. I'm sure it exists.
I'm good.
So before, like in 2005, there was a poll in Britain of what's your favorite book, and Pride and Prejudice beat out the Bible. It beat out Lord of the Rings. It beat out everything, like, comfortably. And I think the legacy of this series is, I believe, I don't know for fact, but I believe it had the largest market share of the British viewing public when it was airing. Like, there's no doubt that you can have conversations without explaining yourself about not just about Pride and Prejudice, but about this miniseries in particular, and people of a certain generation will instantly get it. Like, it is a milestone, and we've talked about in our previous episodes with I, Claudius and with The Prisoner, and no doubt those are very influential and they have huge cult following. Pride and Prejudice is actually the full mainstream, and in a rare instance of mainstream, joy and acceptance, is actually really good, which is nice. Like, it's so easy to binge watch this, as you said. It's so easy to go back and I
gotta go read the
revisit
book
it.
again. Yep.
And the book is an easy read too. It's shockingly faithful. It's
very,
really, really faithful. They leave out one or two things, and they rearrange things for the purpose of television, like storytelling. One of my favorites, this is my last little bits and bob thing, but one of my favorites is there's a whole letter that Elizabeth gets from Mrs. Gardner that's completely eliminated from the series. But when Wickham comes by, when he's back with Lydia on their estate, he interrupts her while she's reading it, which is in the book as well. But it's the miniseries acknowledging Mrs. Gardner's letter without having to bother with it, even though it's kind of a lot of important information. It's a nice little touch where I guess maybe you'd call it fan service, but it's saying no, we didn't forget this. We just didn't have time to go. Just like having Elizabeth read it to her father in the other letter. It's very, very faithful.
Well, I wonder too. When something like this comes out and is very influential, I know they did a number of other Jane Austen adaptations, and quite a few of those are quite good. But I can't really think of other huge influences it had beyond the very superficial elements of it. Like the Bridget Jones sort of thing, and
well, there's an ongoing joke with the casting of Colin Firth in many things, like not just Bridget Jones' Diary, but in Love Actually, they have him fall in the water and get out soaking wet, and there's just this ongoing thing. And unquestionably, Colin Firth's star, like as a celebrity, is cemented from this series, and it's only grown. Jennifer L. kind of disappeared in my mind. There's the Pride and Prejudice Jennifer L., and then there's like the Contagion Zero Dark 30 Jennifer L., where she's 20 years older. Then there's that nice thing in The King's Speech where they're both in it. She's Geoffrey Rush's wife in the thing. I don't know if they share a scene though.
They do.
But there's a nice reunion there. So I don't know what Jennifer L. did in between. More television, more British stage stuff. But she's still very in Hollywood. You see her all the time, and a lot of the supporting actors like Lucy Davis, you see in tons of stuff. She has a very small role as Charlotte's sister, and I see a lot of these actors hither and yon. I think the actress who plays Mrs. Bennet was in a couple Mike Leigh films, either before or after the series.
Really?
Mike Leigh's wife. Is it Mrs. Bennet or is it Mrs. Gardner?
Sorry, are you saying the actress who plays Mrs. Bennet is actually Mike Leigh's wife? That I did not know.
It's either Mrs. Bennet or Mrs. Gardner. Married to Alison Steadman. Mrs. Bennet, yep.
Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she looks a lot different there.
She totally does. I would not believe that.
Yeah.
Well,
okay, so she's not in Mike Leigh films from the success of Pride and Prejudice. She's in Mike Leigh films because she's married to the man. That's interesting. I learned something.
Yeah.
Took us all this podcast to get there, but I learned something.
I just wanted to redeem myself from thinking that it was Timothy Spall who was Mr. Collins. Who, if we're still doing the dream casting, it is Timothy Spall. It's Mike Leigh directing the next Pride.
Absolutely.
Your Charlotte Lucas Mr. Collins spinoff.
In a late 1990s British council estate. Okay. Is there anything else that anybody wants to add
Go see it.
at this point, other than go see it.
Yeah.
If you've listened to all 6 episodes without seeing the series, what is with you?
What the hell?
What the hell? It's certainly worth your time. Again and again and again. It's an easy binge watch. In this day and age of binge watching, 6 hours or just shy of 6 hours is not difficult
It's
at all.
actually probably shorter than most Netflix series. Like,
Yeah.
And it gets more Done. There's no filler in Pride and Prejudice. That's one of the joys of it. It's everything is useful and meaningful. There's no spinning of wheels, which if you think about series like Lost and even, really influential like top tier series like Deadwood has lots of spinning of wheels just for the sake of content. No wasted time in Pride and Prejudice. It gets a lot done in a relatively short period of time.
I was going to say, too, you could have Collins and Charlotte Lucas go to Deadwood in some...
Do the times match? No, the times don't match up. Right?
They're about 40 or so years off, but, they can...
In their dotage.
Once they finally get it all together.
Yeah, they scored a great land claim.
Well, I would like to thank you, Kurt, and thank you, Laura Jane. It's been a pleasure. Always enjoy doing the microcasts. And
well, thanks for letting us kind of work out our...
Thanks for the free counseling. Yeah,
our marriage. Hopefully you've learned something, because I haven't.
How long were you waiting to drop that line?
I know. 15 seconds, like every decision and everything that gets made.
You didn't practice that?
There's no premeditation.
Yeah,
there.
you didn't,
None.
Mr. Collins.
None whatsoever.
Yeah, that's right.
You were practicing it, and then, yes, either Laura Jane's image came up in the mirror.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, popped up. Yeah.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for
My pleasure.
letting us join.
Going forward, we will return probably quite some time. We do like to leave some gaps with this, but with a comedy of a different nature, we're going to attempt the Blackadder series.
Ooh, count me in. Okay.
Oh yeah, you want to come back for another?
Blackadder, yeah.
There's no marriage counseling in that one. It's all joy.
Yeah.
Until that time, thank you again, and hope you've enjoyed the Pride and Prejudice and podcast. Until next time, cue the lace.
Cheers.
Cheers.